Dido, first, congratulations on a very, very fine piece of work. I know it's a life work, and I was very moved by it. My immediate reflection was the extent to which we are receiving information from many sources, and when I look at where my information is coming from on climate change, it's mostly either scientists or dissenters of scientists. And I can honestly say that this is the first time in my many years of work as an environmental educator that I've found anybody really bringing together the outer, the knowledge, with our response to that as human beings living in a time of unprecedented change and crisis. Tell me first about the title, Storm Weathering.
Right. Honestly, I can't remember when I thought it up. It's been around so long. But I associate it with, for example, being brought up in Wellington, where we are now, and where I was in the bays right next to the ocean, the harbour, Wellington Harbour. And I just loved the weather. I loved, Wellington's renowned for wind and storms, and I loved it. And so I suppose to me it was a good title for, we've got the storms of climate change coming. And we also have, like my childhood was full of storms, emotional storms, and pain, emotional pain, right? So somehow being with Wellington Harbour, it somehow enabled me to integrate my personal pain in a kind of larger way, like sort of identifying with the storms of nature, so that it wasn't just my insides, my little... It was something... It allowed it to be a natural force that could kind of expand, and I could weather a physical storm very well. And I used to tramp in the mountains and put on my socks after they'd frozen overnight and all these things. And it was kind of, and so weathering the outer storms helped me to weather the inner storms.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
so it's a lovely image, and as I work with your book, nature is completely woven through the whole book, but not as something outside us.
No,
that is something which we are part of, and I really love the way that you actually provide many different doorways into not just thinking about, but experiencing our interconnectedness with nature. And I think that it's a dimension that's very, very lacking in much environmental education, and myself and many people, most people I know who meditate and have a spiritual practice, it's as if they're sort of separate realms of your life. So I might do a lovely retreat on a Saturday, and then on Sunday I'll go and plant some trees, but bringing them together is something different again. And the subtitle of your book, which gives us a clue to what you're actually doing here, I think, is a workbook for our inner and outer climate. Do you just want to say a little bit about that? It's kind of like it entrances the whole body of work here, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, one thing is that most of us in the West, like I've got a Buddhist background, but actually my original spirituality was in the nature that I lived among. In New Zealand, you're right in it. You've got, bush and birds and weather and so, and I've worked with many students who respond better if a meditation if I give them a Tibetan style meditation. It's too foreign. They can't get into it. What is this? Some deity or some, But if you give the same work with an image from nature, they know, because they have, that's, so many Westerners' spirituality is found in nature. We may divide it when we go planting or, collecting rubbish off the beach. But actually, so many people I've talked to, they say, well, actually where I find it is out, quietly in the bush, by a stream, whatever. So let's use that. Let's use that in our spiritual, because the whole problem with climate change, well, there are many problems in climate change, but basically is losing connection with nature and not seeing the preciousness of nature, but also not realizing that we are part of it. We are creatures like the birds and bees. We're not some separate thing that doesn't, we rely on nature for everything.
Can I share? Yeah, go on.
So, doing this book, it's for your own inner work, and you can use it for the storms, the emotional storms that arise from nature, from climate change. Just let me, before you speak again, let me just say, mention the other dimension of storm weathering, which is this whole meditation path, which is drawn from the Tibetan Buddhist system, or not all Buddhist, some of it's older, presents us with a different way of living. They call it natural mind in the Buddhist system. Natural mind, that's interesting. We want to find our natural mind. So when we find our natural mind through this type of meditation, we find a whole different way of being, and that's what we need to change paradigm outside. So inner and outer storms, I've said, inner and outer climate, that's the title, yeah. So in the outer side is actually, this could help us to embody the way that we need to live, to, if there's still a possibility of surviving this climate disaster, we could create a way of living based on this meditation, which is quite different. And so that's, nature shows us a pattern. Nature's ecosystems show us a pattern. And that's an external pattern. So this work in the book is like, what is the natural ecosystem pattern within us? Because it's the same. That's what I'm saying in the last part of the book. Yeah.